Okay, doke. All right, so we're on chapter 21, Conquering Mara. Thank everybody for being here. And anybody on YouTube, thank you. If you have questions, we'll be more than glad to answer whatever we can. You just let us know through email. So if we start this, it's the three of us. So why don't I read first, and then Kunga, if you will read the second page down to the end of the page, the end of line 17. And then Bernie, if you'll read the next page, section 18 or line 18, down to the end of 21.7, where it says, monks, such were the 32 omens. And then that one section, I think we'll talk about that and then carry on after that. Okay? All right. So, chapter 21, Conquering Mara. Monks, in order to venerate the Bodhisattva, the other Bodhisattvas manifested many such displays at the seat of awakening. The Bodhisattva himself, however, caused all these displays that ornamented all the seats of awakening of the past, present, and future Buddhas in all the Buddha realms, in the 10 directions, to become visible right there at the seat of awakening. Monks, as the Bodhisattva now sat at the seat of awakening, he thought to himself, Mara is the Supreme Lord who holds sway over the desire realm, the most powerful and evil demon. There is no way that I could attain unsurpassed and complete awakening without his knowledge. So I will now arouse that evil Mara. Once I have conquered him, all the gods in the desire realm will also be restrained. Moreover, there are some gods in Mara's retinue who have previously created some basic goodness. When they witness my lion-like display, they will direct their minds toward unsurpassed and complete awakening. Monks, as soon as the Bodhisattva had this thought, a light known as the light which conquers all demonic congregations was emitted from the hair between his eyebrows. The light illuminated all demonic abodes in the entire great trichiliocosm, making them dark by comparison and causing them to shake. In fact, the entire great trichiliocosm was bathed in an immense light. From this light, a voice called out to Mara, the evil one. Here is a pure being who has acted well for many eons. As Suddhodana's son, he abandoned his kingdom. He appeared as a benefactor seeking immortality. He has arrived at the Bodhi tree, so you should now make an effort. Himself having crossed, he causes others to cross. Having himself liberated, he also liberates others. Having found relief, he gives relief to others. Having passed beyond suffering, he will cause others to transcend suffering.
He will empty the three lower realms totally and fill the city of gods and humans. He, the benefactor, will attain immortality and bestow absorption's higher knowledge, immortality, and happiness. He will empty your city of evil kinsmen. With your army powerless, you will be without an army and without allies. When the self-arisen one, by his nature, pours down the rain of Dharma, you will not know what to do or where to go. Monks, Mara, the evil one, was aroused by these verses and had a dream with 32 omens. What are these 32? They are as follows. 1. He saw his abode being filled with darkness. 2. The abode was filled with dust and rough with scattered pebbles. 3. Startled with fear and terror, he fled in the 10 directions. 4. He lost the diadem and his earrings fell off. 5. His lips, throat, and mouth dried out. 6. His heart was beating fast. 7. The leaves, flowers, and fruits in his park withered. 8. His lotus pond were emptied of water and dried out. 9. All birds, such as swans, cranes, peacocks, cuckoos, canalas, and two-headed pheasants, and so forth, had broken wings. 10. All his musical instruments, such as his drum, conch, clay drum, clay drum, hand drum, tambour, lute, harp, cymbals, and tambourines, broke, fell into pieces, then into shreds, and fell on the ground. 11. His beloved kinfolk and retinue abandoned him, their faces cast down while he stood aside and brooded. 12. His chief queen, Marini, fell from her bed onto the ground and started beating her head with her fists. 13. Those among his sons who were the most diligent, powerful, glorious, and intelligent prostrated to the Bodhisattva, who was sitting at the supremely sacred seat of awakening. 14. His daughters wailed and cried out, "Oh no, father, oh no, father." 15. He was dressed in stained clothes. 16. With his head covered in dust and his face colorless and pale, he beheld himself as devoid of any vital force. 17. His palace with its corridors, skylights, and porticos being covered in dust and crumbled down.
18. All his generals from the realm of the Yakshas, Rakshasas, Kumbhandas, and Gandharvas placed their hands on their heads and fled while crying and wailing. 19. Whatever divine regents there are among the gods in the desire realm, Dhritarashtra, Virudaka, Virupaksa, Vaishravana, Shakra, Suryama, Santushita, Sunir, Namanrati, Vasavartin, and so forth. Mara, the evil one, saw all of them eagerly listening to the Bodhisattva with their faces turned towards him. 20. In the midst of battle, his sword could not be pulled from the sheath, and he himself was unwell and wailing. 21. His retinue abandoned him. 22. The vases full of auspicious items fell into a hole. 23. The priest Narada pronounced a curse. 24. The gatekeeper Anandita cried out in distress. 25. The canopy of the sky became covered in darkness. 26. The goddess Shri, who lives in the desire realm, began to weep. 27. His faculties became ineffectual. 28. He lost his allies. 29. His lattices of jewels and pearls became silent, fell apart, tore, and fell down. 30. His whole dwelling swayed. 31. The trees and turrets of his buildings tore and fell over. 32. The entire army of Mara was felled in a confrontation. Monks, such were the 32 omens in the dream of Mara, the evil one.
Okay, thank you. So, anybody got any first impressions on this? Any comment on this?
It struck me that, so I imagine that, Siddhartha sitting on this spot of awakening, and in realizing that in order to be awakened, he can't have any psychological baggage that hasn't been examined. So every deep, dark secret that he's ever pushed down, like he didn't want to deal with, now he has to expose it and and understand it and be aware of it. So that's what I feel like this is setting the stage for. Thank you.
So this is an internal, I don't know what the right word is, a conflict or awakening or an awareness that's going on within the Bodhisattva himself.
Well, everything is.
Right. Yes, exactly. I think so. Bernie, do you have any comment about this?
Just sort of flabbergasted by this list. I was wondering who came up with this list? It was pretty interesting. I, I don't know what it all signifies, but somebody's got quite an imagination. So, no real comment. It's just saying Mara was intimidated by the practice of the Bodhisattva because he saw that he would no longer be ruler of the, as it were, ruler of the world. That the Bodhisattva is turning from his kleshas and conquering his kleshas, and therefore Mara, who has hold over the world through his kleshas, power is going to be diminished to the extent that people follow the teaching of the Bodhisattva. That's all it signifies to me.
Okay, yes, thank you. Alex, do you have any comment about this?
Well, I just want to make sure that I hear it right, that the events, that the omens that we just read, that was not the actual thing that happens. This was sort of like in the dream of the Mara that he saw, right?
Correct. And where is the Mara?
Yeah, and the Mara is kind of it's inside us. So we should interpret this, that if we see such things, I mean, what I'm thinking is we should interpret that if we see such things, such events in our dream, before approaching some practice, we should kind of recognize it, that maybe that is a similar thing that will happen to the Buddha when he approached the Mara, or when he tried to look in the dark side of his nature.
Would it be fair to say that it's a good omen that these things are coming up, and that he's recognizing it, that we're recognizing it when it comes up with us, because it means that we're being mindful of that conflict, that battle that goes between Mara and our aspiration to become liberated from Mara. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a
right. It's bad thing for Mara, but not bad thing for us.
right, for the pure being that's within ourselves.
Yes. For our true nature.
Yes. The one line that to me is very, very important and underlines what we talked about last week and this week, and really is the point that we just were making, is the very first or the second sentence on 21.1, where it says, the Bodhisattva himself, however, caused all the displays that ornamented all the seats of awakening of the past, present, and future Buddhas in all the Buddha realms in the 10 directions to become visible right there at the seat of awakening. So in other words, all this is, in the mind, if you will, of the Bodhisattva himself, and who is an example for us all, that this is what we're all, being part of in our own time, in our own way. Does that sound correct?
Well, yes, to me, and maybe we could remind ourselves here that human language have certain limitation in terms of expressing the truth or the absolute reality, because human language is based on kind of relative truth. It can only really like show relations among the objects, not or point to real objects, but not actually say what the objects are as they are. So we have, and there are certain languages that have more limitations than others in this respect. And English, of course, is not the best one in many aspects. So I think we have to take all this, all all the teachings, including this one, with such a grain of salt that authors may be using some creative expression and creative language and approaches because there is no other way they can kind of speak about what actually have happened.
Okay. I mean, yes, go ahead.
Especially things that happen inside the consciousness as opposed to factual things that can happen in the real world. So just and interestingly, like at NIH, we had a book like interest group that discussing many different books, but we also were kind of sometimes taking spiritual turn there, and so here I'm sharing some musings on that topic, and for the listeners who will listen to the YouTube.
Well, I think last week we were talking about, metaphor, that all this is, has all these different metaphors, analogies, and whatever, and similes, because this is the method, to be able to talk about these things, because there's no clear way to be able to demonstrate it or something. Everybody has to experience this for themselves. So, so I think, yes, the language certainly is circumspect for misinterpretation, but I also think that the essence of what's being conveyed, seems to really be, authentic. There's a line in here later in this one verse, 21.1. It says in the middle here, it says right after you see a number 300 that is in brackets in the middle of that stanza there, it says, there is no way that I could attain unsurpassed and complete awakening without his knowledge. So the I is the Bodhisattva and his is Mara. There's no way I could attain unsurpassed complete awakening without Mara's knowledge. So now I will arouse that evil Mara. So what the Bodhisattva, I think, is saying, I'm going to more aggressively anyway, dig into this. I'm going to bring this up. I'm going to allow this to be examined and so on. I'm not going to wait for it to raise its head, so to speak, when I'm not thinking about it, when I'm not prepared for it. I'm going to dig it out now. So it's a concerted effort by the Bodhisattva to fathom out, Mara, what Mara does, how Mara operates, and so on.
I think another thing that made me think of was that if awakening is this path towards an experience of non-dualism, then you have to incorporate the knowledge of evil in order to have that non-dualistic experience. Can't say that that's not part of it. That knowledge is important to have.
Exactly. And that's the Mahamudra is bringing all this onto the path. Not pushing it aside, bringing it onto the path and seeing that it's part of the purity of what phenomenal nature is. Phenomenal nature is a display of the Dharmakaya, which in itself is perfect, if you want to say it that way. And so here's the display of that for us to be able to examine and see how it manifests and how we can not let it control us. We are in control of it. I think, who was it? Bernie was last week. I'm not sure if I read it or we were talking about the flower garland. And I thought it was really interesting that, there's a flower that's on a string, and then there's a flower, and then there's a gap where you put the next flower in. And then there's another flower, after then there's another gap, then there's another flower, then there's a gap, then there's a flower, and so on. And the point is that the flowers are talking about, if we can say, the positive of the duality, and that the gap in between the flowers is like the negative of the duality. But it's part of phenomenal nature to recognize those undulations and so on. Was that something we talked about last week, Barney? Do you remember that?
All talking about it last week, but my memory is not perfect for sure. You might have talked about it some other time. Generally, all pairs of opposites, hot and cold, long and short, are relative, and and it's hard to understand because we don't usually think of it that way. But also, existence and non-existence are relative. So what you said is correct. The point is not that they are the same, but they are both relative and only exist conventionally. So in that sense, they are the same in that they're both empty. That's my opinion. So.
Yeah, and then further, to take it to the next step, that in Buddha nature, to be able to take that dualism and be able to make it, one taste, if you will, that there needs to be, that the gaps in between the flowers, kind of, there's a stability in that understanding, and the undulation just becomes like a flat line, and that's the realization of the Buddha of the true nature.
Yeah, well, it's important not to be influenced by the presence or the absence of anything, to have that equanimity in your practice, and that sense of equanimity, that patience with whatever happens is really part of the path to realizing emptiness. There's a phrase in the Lalitavistara Sutra, or at least in one translation of it, it says the patient endurance of the uncreated. So it's whether something is or whether something is not, your attitude towards it is the same. And that sort of patience with whatever happens to be coming up is sort of like the gateway to understanding of emptiness, in my opinion.
And I recall about that when there are, we have these undulating events, but then when those events become stable in that unity, if you will, in that union, however you wish to say it, that when there's three events that manifest as the true nature, that's when we can say we're from being an ordinary being who's on the path. But when we have three events that are able to show no dualism, manifest dualism, that we have stabilized that true nature, that the samadhi. In other words, it's perfectly natural for us as we're approaching true nature to go through these undulations. But when we really reach samadhi is when we're able to take those events and not be having those undulations, and that connotes the stability of the samadhi.
Yes, it is like feeling what is cold, feeling what is hot, and feeling something in between, and recognizing, oh yes, this is something warm that's neither cold nor hot. So it's a relative thing to have.
Okay. Thank you. Yes. All right. So can we carry on? So can we go back to the book? 21.8. So Bernie, if you will finish this page, this section, then I'll read the next page, and then let me see. I'll read the next page up to 21.20. 21.20. That's where I'll stop, and then we'll have a discussion about those couple of pages there. So Bernie, when you're ready, please.
Okay. When Mara awoke from his dream, he was so terrified that he gathered all his family members. When he saw that they had gathered along with his armies, his retinue, his generals, and his gatekeepers, he addressed them with these verses. When Mara saw these omens, he became worried. He summoned the demon captain Simhahanu and his sons and his retinue. The evil kinsman then conferred with all of them. Today I heard these verses sung from the sky. A being was born among the Shakyas, adorned with perfect marks. He practiced severe austerities for 6 years, and now he has arrived at the Bodhi tree. You must make great effort. If the Bodhisattva becomes awakened all by himself, he will awaken billions of beings. When he attains immortality and reaches the cool state, he will empty all of our abodes.
Come on, let us advance with great army. We shall destroy that monk alone at his king of trees. Quick, mobilize the 4 army divisions. If you wish to please me, do not delay this. Although the world may be full of worthy ones and solitary Buddhas, my force will remain unharmed when they pass beyond suffering. If he alone becomes a victorious one and a Dharma king, he would never allow the line of uncountable victorious ones to be broken. Monks, at that point, the son of Mara, the evil one, who is named Sarvavaha, addressed his father in this verse. Father, why is your face so sad and pale? Your heart is thumping, and your every limb is shaking. Come now, tell me quick, what did you hear or witness? Let us discover the truth and devise a plan. With his pride vanished, Mara said, Son, listen to me. I had a bad dream, extremely terrifying. If I were to tell everything now to the audience here, you would faint and fall to the ground. Sarvavaha said, When the time for battle has arrived, victory is of no bad consequence. However, for the one who is killed, there is detriment. If your dream conveys an omen of this kind, it may be best to give up and not go to war, which would bring humiliation. Mara replied, One with determined mind will win in battle. If we rely on firmness and correct action, victory will be ours. When he sees me and my retinue, he will be powerless but to rise and bow to my feet. Sarvavaha said, An army may be vast, but if it is weak, a single powerful hero may win the battle. Even if the universe were filled with fireflies, they would be destroyed and eclipsed by a single sun. Moreover, he who is proud and ignorant does not have much acumen. If he is opposed to a shrewd person, he will not be able to think effectively. So here, I think we're seeing, Mara talking with his son, with the retinue, that he has this whole army of ego to go do battle with the Bodhisattva who's on the pathway to be liberated from this this battle and so on. So, Gunga, what do you think? You have any comments?
I don't know. I thought it was interesting that Mara has all these sons and advisors that and there's this whole long dialogue between Mara and his sons and advisors about what he should do and what he shouldn't do, like this vacillation going back and forth, like pumping himself up. And I guess and when I think about that with the process going through, the Bodhisattva is going through, I think of that as just sort of exploring or options, weighing options, or just seeing things from multiple perspectives. Just that whole decision making process, that's how I sort of interpret that. Thank you.
Bernie?
Um, I don't have that much to add. It's you're right. I'm surprised. I used to think of Mara as more or less a solitary figure, but it turns out that he has a wife and kids and a whole essentially a whole kingdom at his command, which is kind of new to me. And of course, they're all advising him, and he's girding up for battle here. Is the well-known battle where he appears before the Buddha underneath the Bodhi tree, or the Bodhisattva underneath the Bodhi tree. And there's nothing really doctrinal in here to talk about. It's just the continuation of the story, as far as I can see.
Alex?
Well, to me, it reads more like a mythology piece. I mean, what words can describe what happens somewhere deep inside our hippocampus, limbal brain, or like amygdala? There is no words to describe like every chemical reaction that may accompany this psychological process. So this is a mythological language so we can relate to and recognize what is happening inside us. As, for example, we sit down for deep meditation or long retreat, and there will be our ego that will rising up and start making all kind of rationalizations, bringing up doubts, thinking about our relatives, our sons, daughters, wives, husbands, whoever not, and they would be also giving their own advices, or we would be remembering their advices, or what to do and what not to do. So that's what I think as army of Mara. It's all the things that attach to our deep-seated ego consciousness that we have to now like face and kind of recognize and deal with it. And it is logical, it is powerful, it has common sense, it has it has determination, so also has its own doubts, so it has everything in it, and that's what we have to confront, I guess, and that's what Buddha was confronting. That's what my take on that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think it's like a personification of the drama that goes on inside our own minds and so on. Everything has been anthropomorphized, if that's the right way to pronounce that. We made everything into, Mara being like a human being and the gods being like a human being and so on like that, because it all takes place within the human being. But to give it a whole family, a whole retinue and so on is very interesting. And it gives us it familiarizes this. Because I think also, back in the day when these sutras were being, written down and so on, the people themselves largely were illiterate. And this became, a method of teaching illiterate people by creating these familiar stories, that are going on spiritually within themselves and so on. So I think there's that element, these are great writers, creating, to some degree, great fiction, based on, some kernels of things that go on in our lives, guilt or whatever, and it's interesting to me personally because, um, sometimes, I've thought about so many things and thought about things when I was a kid, thought about things when I was a teenager, when I was in my 20s and so on. And I think I've already dealt with them, but yet they still come up at times, and what are you going to get down, but it's just, it's like this army. It's like this family. Here's the son now. He's picked up the banner and he's going to knock me down, If it's not Mars, it's Mars' son that's going to knock me down. And if I, surrender and play that game, I'm beat, But I have to be resolute. I have to think about this, to some degree and be able to, the liberation continues because I'm not perfectly realized. I'm not, but it seems to be like that to me. Okay. Anybody have any other comments? I thought another thing I'll say is in 21.12, I thought it was interesting to say, it says, "Come on, let's advance with a great army. We shall destroy that monk alone with the king of trees. Quick, mobilize the 4 army divisions. If you wish to please me, do not delay this." So it's really Mara himself is bolstering his courage. Wow, this really nice guy, this Bodhisattva, we can beat this guy up. He doesn't want to lose. You can go out and do those terrible things. You can go out and, justify all your terrible deeds and so on, and wear it as a badge of honor and so on, that you can do this, that you batted down, this Bodhisattva. Okay. Can we continue reading then? So 21.20. So Kunga, if you will resume reading the rest of that page and into the next page. And then Bernie, if you will read 21.24, then that page. And then this next one is the fourth. Let me see. This is the third group here. So this goes... Then we go to the bottom of page 2142, where we continue to take turns as we've been doing. Okay? So, Kunga, when you're ready.
How far do we go?
We're going to stop at the end of 2142. So you read first.
Okay.
You read
and
first.
Then I'll read 2134. Yeah.
Huh?
I'll read first and I'll go and finish off at 2134 to the end.
You read 20 to 2124 on the next page.
Mm-hmm.
Then Bernie comes and he reads the rest of that. Then I read the next page. And then Kunga, you read the last page from 2134 down to 2142, if that's what you were saying. Okay.
Yep.
So, didn't understand.
Moreover, he who is proud and ignorant does not have much acumen.
Wait a minute. We're starting at 2120.
Oh, sorry. Monks, Mara, the evil one, did not pay heed to Sarvatthavaha's warning. Instead, he gathered all 4 divisions of his great and powerful army. It was a terrifying army, so brave in battle that it would make anyone's hair stand on end. Such an army had never been seen before or even heard of in the realms of gods and humans. The soldiers were able to transform their faces in a trillion ways. On their arms and legs slithered hundreds of thousands of snakes, and in their hands they brandished swords, bows, arrows, darts, lances, axes, tridents, clubs, staffs, bludgeons, lassos, cudgels, discuses, vajras, and spears. Their bodies were covered in finest cuirasses and armor. Some had their heads, hands, or feet turned backwards, or their eyes facing backwards. Their heads, eyes, and faces were ablaze. Their bellies, hands, and feet were deformed, and their faces brimmed with vehement ardor. Their mouths, with protruding ugly fangs, appeared contorted in the extreme, and their thick and broad tongues, rough like a turtle's neck or a straw mat, dangled from their mouths. Like the eyes of a black snake, which are flushed with poison, their eyes were blazing red as if on fire. Some of them were vomiting poisonous snakes, while others, like Garudas emerging from the ocean, grasped these poisonous snakes in their hands and ate them. Some ate human flesh and drank blood, chewing on human arms, legs, heads, and livers, and slurping entrails, feces, and vomit. Their terrifying bodies had many colors, such as brown, blue, red, black, and blazing yellow. Some had ugly hollow eyes like wells. Others had eyes that were gouged out, eyes that were ablaze or disfigured eye sockets. Some had ugly eyes, rolling and blazing. Some carried flaming mountains in their hands, while playfully riding on other mountains as their mount. Others ran toward the Bodhisattva, carrying trees that had been uprooted. Some had ears like goats, demons, elephants, or pigs, or hanging ears. Others had no ears at all. Some had swollen bellies and weak bodies, with their bones sticking out. They had broken noses, bellies like barrels, and feet round as balls. Their skin, flesh, and blood had dried out, and their ears, noses, hands, feet, eyes, or heads were cut. Some were thirsty for blood. Some were so thirsty for blood that they would cut each other's heads off. They would make snappy, ugly, terrifying, and rough sounds of fut, fut, cut, fulu, fulu. Others would call, "Let's get rid of him. Grab that mendicant, Gautama, along with his tree. Let's make sure that he is caught, cut, slashed, tied, held, harassed, cut in pieces, gotten rid of, and destroyed." They were disfigured and caused terror with their awful faces of foxes, jackals, pigs, donkeys, oxen, elephants, horses, camels, wild asses, buffaloes, rabbits, yaks, rhinos, and the eight-legged lion beast. Some had animal bodies like lions, tigers, wild boars, bears, monkeys, elephants, cats, goats, sheep, snakes, mongooses, fish, crocodiles, alligators, tortoises, ravens, vultures, owls, and garudas.
Some had misshapen forms. Some had just one head, but others had two or more. Some had even up to 100,000. Some had no head at all. Some had just one arm, while others had up to 100,000. Others had no arms. Some had just one leg, while others had up to 100,000. Others had no legs at all. Some had poisonous snakes emerging from their bodily apertures, ears, mouth, noses, eyes, and belly buttons. They threatened the Bodhisattva as they danced around and brandished their many weapons, such as swords, bows, arrows, darts, tridents, axes, discuses, spears, lances, vajras, javelins, and other sharp weapons. Some of them wore garlands of human fingers that they had cut off and strung together. Others wore on their heads bones, hands, and skulls, which they had strung like garlands, and some had their bodies covered in poisonous snakes. Some were holding skulls and riding on elephants, horses, camels, donkeys, and buffaloes. Some had their heads pointing down and feet up. Some had needle-like hair on their heads. Others had hair like oxen, donkeys, boars, mongooses, goats, sheep, cats, monkeys, wolves, or jackals. They were vomiting poisonous snakes, spitting out lumps of iron, spewing fire, and producing a rain of flaming iron and copper. They sent rains with thunder, released bolts of lightning, caused a rain of hot iron sands, gathered black clouds, and made storms arose. They sent rains consisting of masses of arrows, bringing darkness and causing swishing sounds as they ran towards the Bodhisattva. Some of the soldiers swung their lassos, destroyed great mountains, entered the vast ocean, jumped over the tall mountains, and shook Meru, the king of mountains. In that way, they came running, throwing their limbs in the air and rocking their bodies. They cried out loudly in laughter, slapped and beat their chests, and disheveled their hair. Their faces were yellow and their bodies blue, their heads flaming with a hair streaming upward, running towards and running around impetuously, darting here and there with eyes like a fox. They tried to frighten the Bodhisattva.
Old women approached the Bodhisattva and called out to him, "Oh no, son! Oh no, my son! Get up! Quick! Get up and flee!" Awful forms of demonesses, flesh-eaters, and hungry spirits, one-eyed, limping, and with hunger in their eyes, ran toward the Bodhisattva with outstretched hands, distorted faces, and terrifying cries. They were fearful and horrifying. Such an army of demons formed a big gathering, stretching 80 leagues on every side. Just like this single army, so too the armies of hundreds of zillions of evil demons residing in the great Tricheliocosm spread themselves around the Bodhisattva in horizontal and upward directions. On this topic it is said, forms of yaksas, kumbhandanas, maharagas, as well as rakshasas, hungry spirits, and flesh-eaters, in any form that the world finds ugly and fierce, all have been magically manifested there by these rogues. They have 1, 2, 3 heads, up to 1,000 faces, 1, 2, 3 arms, up to 1,000 arms. There are also many with 1, 2, 3 legs, even some with 1,000 legs. Some have a blue face and a yellow body. Others have a yellow face and a blue body. Their heads and bodies do not match. Such is the army of soldiers approaching. They have faces like tigers, snakes, and hogs, elephants, horses, donkeys, and camels, monkeys, lions, or bears. Such are these faces, such are the faces of the approaching army. Many terrifying, malevolent spirits approach, with wild matted hair, sheep heads, crooked bones, and goiters. Their bodies are drenched with human blood. Such are the malevolent spirits that approach. Their legs are like the legs of an antelope. Their eyeballs look like those of monkeys. Their fangs look like elephant tusks. Such are the faces of the approaching army.
The shape of their bodies is that of a crocodile. Their 2 eyeballs are ablaze. Their ears are like those of a goat. Such are the faces of the approaching army. Some hold up a staff in their hands. Others brandish hammers, clubs, and tridents, while some hold Mount Meru in their hands. These are the terrifying forms of the approaching malevolent spirits. They hold on sickles, brandish discuses, roll their eyes, lift great mountaintops in their hands, and bring down storms and rains of rock and meteor. These are the terrifying malevolent spirits approaching. They blow hurricanes, bring down rainstorms, shoot off billions of lightning bolts, roar with thunder, and sway trees. Yet the leaves on the Bodhi tree remain still. The rain pours down in torrents. Rivers overflow and flood the land. So many terrifying things have appeared that even inanimate trees fall over. As they witness these terrible forms, all of them ugly and misshapen, yet the one who has qualities, marks, and splendors keeps his mind unshaken, like Mount Meru. He sees all phenomena as illusion, like a dream and like clouds. Since he sees them in this manner that accords with the Dharma, he meditates steadfastly, established in the Dharma. Whoever thinks of me and mine and clings to objects in the body should be afraid and terrified, since they are in the clutches of ignorance. The son of the chakras yet realize the essential truth that all phenomena arise in dependence and lack of reality. With a mind like the sky, he is just fine, unperturbed by the spectacle of the army of rogues.
Okay. Any comments? Alex, what do you think?
Well, to me, it's just like an interesting exercise for the mind. Well, very creative exercise for the mind. What terrible bad things can happen around us, and yet we can still maintain our balance. We can still maintain our concentration, poise, and stability. So just reading that and trying to imagine all that, that's already prepares the mind for the next steps, I think. So that's very useful in its own, just to read that.
Yes, thank you. Barney, you have any comment?
Well, no, we're just sort of continuing on the same path, the elaborate description of the army. What is interesting here is that the first wave of the attack of Mars seems to be based on fear. I mean, I certainly would be afraid if something like this appeared during my meditation. So, I mean, in my meditation, I really haven't had much problem with fear, but I have heard other people say that they're frightened by the idea of selflessness, and that if their sense of self suddenly disappeared, it would be like death. So I suppose that fear could be the first attack of the first level of resistance before enlightenment.
Yes. Kunga, you have a comment?
I agree with what has been said. I don't think I have anything to add.
Okay. Yeah. The one thing I would like to add is just the point in 21.40, and then the next couple lines it says, he sees all phenomena as illusion. So the mechanism, the technique that the Bodhisattva is able to withstand this onslaught of Mara is through recognizing it as phenomenal nature, its illusory nature. And this is what brings him back to his balance, his sense of what's going on here. You know, it's just a display of the mind running through its thing, being guided by the ego. Here in 21.42, it says that all phenomena arise in dependence and lack reality. It's only a movie.
Yes, all that familiar concepts here.
Yes. And I've told stories about this before, but back in the day, when I was, doing, psychedelics and things like that, you question your sanity, and we would say, it's only a movie, it's only we're just, the mind is just creating this itself, not to think of it as being real, and then later on you could examine it and see what it related to, but it's only a movie. It's only a movie. So that has carried on, you know. I mean, that was a period of time when I was doing psychedelics, but then afterwards, you know, has been, you know, 50 years of not doing psychedelics, but doing serious meditation and seeing that the same process continues, you know, and that you're in control of it. You know, in those days, you know, there was little control, but it was like a window and being able to see what is possible. Then you do it naturally and so on and say, oh, wow, that's how the mind operates. That's how things are.
It seems like there has to be another part to that. Like it's sort of one-sided to say it's only a movie because it is because you know if you get shot, it may only be a movie, but it still hurts a lot. There's another side to that. I think to recognize that it's only relative, but it's still what's happening right now. We can't deny. We shouldn't just pretend. You know, it can be like just to say everything is like a movie. Seems like that's another delusion to fall off of. You know, like um, that can be a barrier to the path.
Well, yeah, of course, when they always talking about emptiness, they talk about the two extremes of existence and non-existence. And what you're talking about seems to be more like the extreme of non-existence, to deny it has any existence at all. And especially when it comes to troubling things, you can't just push them down and pretend they don't exist. You have to confront them at a certain level. But at the same time, you've got to see that what you're confronting really is your own mental fabrications.
Yeah, well, I agree with both of what you said, and that's the thing, you know, to not be crushed by, you know, these visions, crazy things going on by the movie itself, but being able to take stock in, well, what is this? And then when you have the ability to be able to logically think things through, then that's when you can apply that method to be able to say, oh, okay, you know, I can differentiate, you know, what was, what I have control over, what I didn't have control over. But there's a lot of people, most people I know from those days, most people I know were crushed by those experiences. You know, people,
Frightening experiences,
yeah, you know, they were tripping and so on and came out damaged.
so-called bad trips, really.
Yeah, bad trips and so on. Yeah, absolutely. Flashbacks and everything, all that kind of stuff
Oh, really?
that were crushing people. I know more people crushed than I know people that got out, you know, that had a successful, you know, result.
Oh, that's pretty sad.
Yeah, well, people didn't know understand what it was. They weren't, you know, learning about it and everything. You know, for myself, I was studying it. You know, I was reading all about it. I was, you know, I was a student of what was the zeitgeist of that at this time. Okay. Any other thoughts? Okay. All right. So we go to the fourth recitation, which starts on 2143. So I think Bernie's up for that.
Turn, yeah, okay.
Is that right? And then it was Bernie. Then
That it
who
is my
recited
turn.
last? It was Kunga recited last.
No, it's my turn, right?
So it's Bernie. Then it's me. Then it's Kunga again. So we continue this order for quite a while now till we get to um, the end of 21.106.
Wow, that's a lot.
Well, it goes by quick.
Okay,
There's short verses, and it goes by quick, and
okay,
but it's all one, you know, element, you know, to this chapter.
okay. Let's go then. I'll
Okay,
start.
all right.
Monks, among the 1,000 sons of Maras, the evil one, there was some like Sartavaha who began to feel devotion toward me, the Bodhisattva. They all assembled on the right side of Mara, the evil one, while those who supported Mara took a stand on his left side. Now Mara asked his son, what type of army should we use to subdue the Bodhisattva? Standing to his right, Mara's son Sartavahas spoke this verse to his father. Would you want to wake up the leader of the Nagas? Would you want to wake up the leader of the elephants? Would you want to wake up the king of the animals? That is like wanting to disturb the leader of men from his ease. Standing to his left, Mara's son Durmati replied, even at the mere sight of us, people's hearts burst, and so does the solid core of great trees. Struck by my stare, what power would this monk have? Or struck by death, what power would he have to live in this world? From the right side, Madara Nirgosa spoke. What solid core do trees have, for that matter? You say, I will break him by staring, but can you do that, people? Even if you could destroy Mount Meru with your stare, you could not even open your eyes in his presence. Moreover, to cross the ocean using one's hands and to drink its water is impossible for people. Yet looking directly at the Bodhisattva's stainless face would be even harder than that. From the left side, Satabahu said, my body has 100 arms, and with just one of them I can shoot off 100 arrows. O Father, I will break the body of this monk. So happy and go now without delay. Or be happy and go now without delay. From the right side, Subhuti said, if it is advantageous to have 100 arms, why do bodily hairs not become arms? You may hold a spear in each of your hands and use them all, yet that will bring you nothing.
Why is that? Because of his love, the body of this sage is inaccessible to poison, weapons, and fire. Since the love that he feels transcends the world, when you shoot your weapons, they turn into flowers. And moreover, all the powerful ones in the sky, the earth, and the waters, whether humans or Gyuyakas, may hold up their swords and axes, but when they go to the leader of men, who has the power of forbearance, they all change from very strong to weak. On the left side, someone named Ugratehas called out, invisible, I will enter his beautiful body, and then I will burn it, like a low forest fire would burn a dry, hollow tree. On the right side, Sunetra replied, you may burn the entire Mount Meru and enter, invisible, into the earth, but his Vajra mind cannot possibly be burned. By the likes of you, even if you were equal in number to the grains of sand in the Ganges. Moreover, it can happen that all mountains quake, and it may be that the oceans dry up. It is also possible that the sun and moon will fall from the sky, and it may be that the earth will one day melt away. Yet it is impossible that the one who has set out to benefit the world with a firm resolve should rise from the foot of the great tree before he attains awakening. From the left side, Durgaba Gurgavita said, right here before you, I could use my bare hands to grind to dust the sun, the moon, and the stars.
I could with playful ease get hold of all the water in the 4 oceans. Father, I will get hold of this monk and throw him to the end of the oceans. Father, may this army stand firm. Do not be aggrieved. I will uproot the Bodhi tree and scatter it everywhere with my hands. From the right side, Prasa Dapraptil Bodhisattva said, "You may proudly assume that you can crush with your hands all the gods, demigods, and Gandharvas, along with the earth, the mountains, and the oceans. Yet even thousands of beings like you, as many as there are grains of sand in the Ganges, will be unable to move a single hair on that wide Bodhisattva." From the left side, Vayamkara said, "Father, for one who is set in the midst of a great army, what is the use of excessive fear? He does not have an army. Where are his allies? Why do you fear him?" From the right side, Ekagramati said, "In the universe, the sun and the moon have no army, and the universal monarch and the lion have no army. Likewise, this Bodhisattva has no army, yet he is capable of destroying Namuchi single-handedly." From the left side, Avatara Prexin said, "He has no lances or spears, no clubs or swords, no horses, elephants, chariots, or foot soldiers. That single arrogant monk sitting there, Father, I will kill him today. Please have no worries." From the right side, Punyamakara said,
Continue.
"His body is unshakable and indestructible like Narayana's. He wears an armor of forbearance and wields the sword of unbendable diligence. The threefold liberation is his steed and knowledge is his bow. Father, through the force of his merit, the Bodhisattva will conquer Mara's army."
From the left side, Anivartan said, "The fire burning on the plains does not shy from burning the grass. The arrow shot skillfully cannot be stopped by a learned one. The bolt of lightning shooting across the sky does not return. I will not rest until I have conquered the son of the Shakyas." From the right side, Dharma Karma said, when meeting wet grass, the fire retreats. When the arrow hits a mountain peak, it rebounds. The bolt of lightning, having hit the ground, sinks down. Until the Bodhisattva attains peaceful immortality, he will not retreat. And why? Father, even if one could draw pictures in the empty sky, or gather the minds of all sentient beings, as many as there are, into one, or my Father, bind the sun, the moon, and the wind with a noose, one could still not move the Bodhisattva from the seat of awakening. From the left side, Anupashanta said, "With the great poison of my gaze, I can burn Mount Meru and turn the waters in the great oceans to ashes. So, Father, look at the seat of awakening and that monk, as I now turn both of them to ashes with my gaze." From the right side, Siddhartha said, "You may be able to fill the world with poison and put ablaze the great trichiliocosm, yet the mere glance from the one who is the source of all good qualities, your poison will lose its toxicity. In the three realms, there are fierce poisons in the form of attachment, anger, and delusion, yet none of them can be found in his body nor in his mind, just as the mind and dust cannot be found in the heavens."
His body, speech, and mind are pristine, and he is filled with love for sentient beings. No weapon or poison will be able to harm him. So, Father, please let us all turn back. From the left side, Ratilola said, "I will play thousands of instruments and send forth billions of well-adorned divine girls who will get him excited and lead him to our exquisite harem. I will provide sexual pleasures and bring him under your control." From the right side, Dharma Marathi said, "He only delights in the pleasures of the Dharma, the bliss of concentration, and the significance of immortality, and the joy of liberating sentient beings, and the happiness of a loving mind. He does not delight in the pleasures of passion. From the left side, Bhattacharya said, I can at once swallow the sun and the moon, and the wind blowing through the sky. Father, I will catch that mendicant this very day, and blow him away like a handful of husk. From the right side, Mara's son named Akalamati said, even if all gods and humans became as swift and strong as you are, and gathered in a single place, they would be unable to harm this peerless being. From the left side, Brahmamati said, if there were such a fierce crowd of our men, he could do nothing to wound your pride. Since all tasks are accomplished by teams, how could he harm you just on his own? From the right side, Simamati said, lions have never been seen sitting on the ground in a row. Those with poisonous gaze do not team up. Those splendorous beings that have courage because of being true, those supreme leaders of beings also do not congregate together.
From the left side, Sarvakandala said, Father, you have not heard such heated voices before, as those your sons are calling out with now. Mustering diligence, speed, and power, let's quickly go and destroy that monk. From the right side, Simanadin said, in the midst of the jungle, when the lion is not there, many jackals bark. Yet when they hear the lion's frightening roar, they flee in panic in all directions. In the same way, these ignorant sons of Mara, as long as they have not heard the voice of the perfect man, raise their voices opinionated and imprudent, while the lion of men remains silent. From the left side, the Titasintan said, whatever I wish for is quickly accomplished, so why does he not look at us with circumspection? He must be either deluded or ignorant, since he does not rise up quickly and flee. From the right side, Sasintitartha said, he is neither a fool nor a weakling. You yourselves are the fools, so extremely careless. You have no idea about his valor. The power of his insight will conquer you all. Even with the strength of demonic sons, equal in number to the grains of sand in the river Ganges, you will not be able to bend a single hair on his head. So how much less could you kill him? Do not corrupt your minds. Instead, you should respect him with devotion. He is about to become king of the three realms. Turn back and do not make war.
In this way, 1,000 of Mara's sons, both good and bad, each further addressed Mara, the evil one, in verses. At the end, Bhadrasena, the general of Mara, spoke these verses to him. All those who normally follow you, such as Chakra, the guardians, the hordes of the half-Kinnaras, the leaders of the demigods, and the leaders of the Garudas, now they all join their palms and bow to the Bodhisattva. So what need is there to mention those who do not follow you? Brahma and the luminous gods, and the gods of the pure realms, they too all bow to him. From those of your sons who are wise, who are powerful and smart, venerate the Bodhisattva in accord with his essence. This army of yakshas and other beings, which extends for 80 leagues, is seen in full by the all-seeing one, with a clear mind and without hatred, since he is neither taken aback nor stirred when seeing the wild and fierce army, so hideous and frightening. His victory is certain now. Wherever this army is found, the cries of the jackal and owls are heard. When the calls of the crow and the donkey ring out, it is wise to quickly retreat. Please look toward the seat of awakening. Clever curlews, swans, cuckoos, and peacocks are circumambulating the Bodhisattva. It is certain that today the victory will be his. Wherever this army is found, dust and soot rain from the sky. Yet at the seat of awakening, a rain of flowers fall. So heed my words and turn back. Wherever this army is found, the general ground is uneven and filled with thorns and prickles. Yet at the seat of awakening, the ground is stainless like gold. So it is better for the wise to retreat.
The past nightmares will now come true. If you do not retreat, he will reduce this army to dust. Just as countries are destroyed by the sages, when the supreme masterful sage became angry with King Brahmadatta, he burned the Dandaka forest, so that for many years no grass would grow. Whatever sages there are who practice disciplined conduct and practice austerities, he is supreme among them, for he does not harm any living being. Have you not heard before that the one whose body blazes with all the marks and who walks away with his home will conquer disturbing emotions and attain awakening? The sons of the victors manifest such great powers as an act of worship, for isn't the Supreme Being a worthy recipient of the best of offering rites? Since the immaculate hair between his eyebrows beautifies 1,000,000,000,000 realms and outshines all of us, he will surely conquer Mara's army. Since the gods at the peak of existence are unable to see the crown of his head, so surely without being taught by others, he will attain omniscience. Since Mount Meru and the surrounding ranges, the sun, the moon, Chakra, Brahma, all the trees, and the best of mountains, all prostrate to the seat of awakening, it is certain that the one with the power of merit, the powers of knowledge and wisdom, and the powers of forbearance and diligence will render Mara's factions powerless.
Like an elephant stepping on a fresh clay pot, or a lion fighting a fox, or the sun facing a firefly, the well-gone one will obliterate our army. Upon hearing these words, another son of Mara became enraged, and with bloodshot eyes he said, "Your praise for this lone person without any bounds. What could that single man be capable of? Can't you see this great and terrifying army?" Then from the right side, the son of Mara, called Mara Pramardaka, said, "It is not necessary to help the sun in this world, nor the lion or the universal monarch. The Bodhisattva sitting with resolve for awakening surely does not need any helpers." At that point, in order to weaken the strength of the demons, the Bodhisattva turned his face, which resembled a blooming lotus with 100 petals, towards them. Upon seeing the Bodhisattva's face, Mara took flight. But while fleeing, he had the thought that his army could withstand the sight of the Bodhisattva's face, and he once again turned back. Assisted by his followers, he now began to hurl various weapons upon the Bodhisattva. However, even when they threw mountains as big as the central mountain at the Bodhisattva, the mountains all turned into flower canopies and celestial palaces. Those with poisonous gazes, those with poisonous snakes, and those with poisonous breath shot flames of fire at the Bodhisattva. Yet the circle of fire just turned into what seemed to be the Bodhisattva's halo of light. The Bodhisattva now touched his right hand to his head. Mara perceived that the Bodhisattva was brandishing a sword in his hand and slowly fled toward the south. However, thinking that it could not be true after all, he again returned. When he came back, the demons began to hurl all sorts of terrifying weapons at the Bodhisattva. They threw swords, arrows, darts, lances, axes, clubs, javelins, bludgeons, discuses, vajras, hammers, uprooted trees, rocks, lassos, and iron balls. However, as soon as the demons released the weapons turned into garlands and canopies of flowers, and a cooling rain of flower petals fell on the ground. The flower garlands hung as adornments on the Bodhi tree.
When Mara, the evil one, witnessed the Bodhisattva's power and the displays he performed, his mind was disturbed with jealousy and avarice. He called out to the Bodhisattva, "Listen, young prince, get up and relish your kingship. Your virtue lies precisely in doing that. On what grounds could you ever attain liberation?" The Bodhisattva answered Mara, the evil one, with words that were firm, profound, vast, gentle, and sweet. "You evil one, through just an unstinting act of giving, you have become lord of the desire realm. I, on the other hand, have performed trillions of unstinting acts of giving. I have cut off my hands, legs, eyes, and my head, and given them to beggars with the intention to liberate sentient beings. I have often given beggars my house, wealth, grains, beds, clothes, and parks. Mara, the evil one, replied with this verse, previously made a wholesome act of giving. It was an unstinting act, and you are my witness. But you have no witness to your acts, so there is no point in speaking of them, and instead you will be conquered. The Bodhisattva replied, Evil one, the earth here is my witness. He then embraced Mara, the evil one, and his demon retinue with thoughts of love and compassion. Like a lion, he was without fear, fright, anxiety, timidity, disturbance, and perturbation. He had no goose bumps, which indicate fear. He now let his right hand slide over his entire body and then gracefully tap the earth. The hand that had the contours of a conch, a victory banner, a fish, a vase, a swastika, an iron hook, and a wheel. The hand's fingers were connected by a web. Its nails were exquisite and copper-colored, soft and supple. It looked perfectly youthful. All this was the result of limitless aeons of gathering, the accumulations of basic goodness. He then spoke this verse. The earth supports all beings. She is impartial and unbiased towards all, whether mourning or still, whether moving or still. She is my witness that I speak no lies, so may she bear my witness. As soon as the Bodhisattva touched the great earth, it shook in 6 different ways. It quivered, trembled, and quaked, and it boomed, thundered, and roared, just as a Magadhan brass cauldron, when struck with a wooden log, chimes and reverberates. So did this great earth sound and reverberate when struck by the Bodhisattva with his hand.
Then the earth goddess in this great tricheliocosm, who is called Starva, along with her retinue of 1 billion earth goddesses, began to shake the entire great earth. Not far from where the Bodhisattva was sitting, she broke through the earth's surface and revealed her upper body, adorned with all sorts of jewels. She bowed toward the Bodhisattva, joined her palms, and said to him, You are right, great being, you are right. It is just as you say. We bear witness to this, but still, my Lord, you alone are the supreme witness in the worlds of gods and humans, and the supreme authority. Having spoken thus, the earth goddess Stavara rebuked Mara, the evil one, in many ways and praised the Bodhisattva again and again. She made a great display of her myriad powers and then disappeared together with her following there and then. When the wicked one and his army heard that sound from the earth, frightened and disheartened, they all fled, just like jackals in the forest hearing the lion's roar, or crows taking flight when a rock is thrown. So we stop there for the time being. So what comments do you have?
Well, it's basically a sort of a dialogue going back and forth. The first part, at least, is a dialogue going back and forth about, on the one hand, the qualities of the Buddha to overcome all passion, fear, and anger by his virtues, and on the other hand, the demons or the army of Mara, saying that they regardless, they're able to overcome a single individual. So it's basically, I've got this, but no, the Bodhisattva has this antidote to this negativity that you represent.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that the Mara's army, his family and generals and so on, that there was two sides, and they were, defending the Bodhisattva on one side and then defending Mara on the other side. So it's interesting that even Mara, had doubt.
Yeah, well, I think it's just set up that way to have a dialogue between the two sides. It's sort of a rhetorical device to have them arguing among each other, because the Bodhisattva, for the most part, is just sitting there silently. So he has to have one side of Mara's army arguing on his behalf.
So would it be fair to say that those that were supporting the Bodhisattva had been, corrupt as Mara, but had recognized the Bodhisattva and are changing their minds or changing their ways?
That's how they present it here in the text. But basically, I think it's kind of a literary device to present both sides of the argument for the Buddha when the Buddha's not speaking because he's in his meditation. It's only when he's challenged by Mara as to his past merit, accumulation of merit, that he speaks and defends himself by calling on the earth as his witness.
Mm-hmm. Alex, do you have a comment? What do you think about it seems like this everlasting, conflict with oneself, between, virtue and non-virtue? Alex, are you there?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, sorry, I got breaking up. So this is like our superconscious and subconscious, so to speak, or left and right side of the brain, which is of course different. It's like metaphorical left and right side of the brain. That like we have demon and angel, so to speak, talking to each other within us. So just reproducing this kind of internal dialogue, just a little more dramatic than normally what we see probably inside ourselves or in others. But it's interesting to go through that in such aspect. And by the way, it reminds me of one of the movies about Buddha that had actually depiction of some of that in rather
What do you think, of the image that around 21.107, where the Bodhisattva had been very, kind of, taking it all in, but then he turns directly at Mara, and he begins to face him directly, and he's not going to take it anymore. I'm going to, state my case, and and then he goes through the ritual of his right hand touching, touching his body, then going down and touching the earth and so on, making his steadfastness known, declaring that.
I thought it was interesting, sort of a transition from, first you were dealing with the fear, the fear of how horrible all the demons look. And then it was, dealing with the violence they put upon him, the anger. So in the response to the anger, I think there's something in here about compassion, but I couldn't find it again. But I think that's the idea is that, when the Buddha confronts Mara, he confronts the three ignorances, or three passions, fear, anger, and desire. Those are he encounters those three things, and I think of that. First the fear, the army is, the appearance of the Mara's army is supposed to generate fear, and then the attack of Mara's army is supposed to generate anger, and then next, we'll next read about the daughters of Mara trying to create desire in the Bodhisattva.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I remember what you're talking about, but I don't see it here right here myself.
Did this little short thing about compassion.
Yeah. I thought here, I don't recall right off the top of my head where a gender has been applied to the concept of the earth. The referring to the mother, the she is the earth and so on, and then this earth goddess arises, and she certainly takes the side of the Bodhisattva.
In many cultures, Earth is represented by a feminine goddess, something like that.
Yes. Yeah, if you go back to 2169, 2170, I think that's where the Siddhartha, and here it says Siddhartha says. So I don't know if this Siddhartha is one of the sons of Mara, or it's referring to the Bodhisattva, but nevertheless it says, he's taken the point of, says the one who is the source of all good qualities, and then goes in and talks about the three realms and the three poisons and so on like that. So maybe that's the point that you're thinking of.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, all this is setting the struggle of the path of or the seat of awareness, of awakening. What is going on the seat of awakening? It's like, beware, oh, you who are about to embark on this seat of awakening yourselves, beware that there is going to be, these logical approaches. There's going to be these arguments. There's going to be these positions, that you're going to go through, and develop your armor, develop yourself for this, prepare yourself for this. So we're about halfway through this chapter, and there's not a whole lot of time to go into the next part. So, does anybody have any other comments about this to wrap this up at this point, and then we'll continue next week with hopefully we'll get through the second half of this.
Well, it's basically just a more elaborated version of the traditional story of the temptation of Mara, of the Bodhisattva under the tree. It's just took that basic story and elaborated it with all these extra conversations of Mara with his followers, or whatever you want to call them. But the basic story follows the same story that's in the traditional life of the Buddha, the story of his enlightenment. And the order of the temptations follows the same order that's traditional there. It's just much longer with these additional conversations.
I think it does a good job, making it maybe maybe the original the story that I'm used to, it makes it all just seem too easy. Like, oh yeah, we're gonna go sit under the tree, and then we're gonna struggle with desire, and we're gonna discover with these poison, and then but then we'll just go beyond them because it just makes it into much more of a it gives you a sense that it's a much more difficult task than maybe the shorter story leads you to believe. It's like it's a much it's it's really something you're going to have to work at rather than just something that's going to be happening because you meditated once or twice. I think that's the sense I get from it. It's because maybe it makes the whole thing seem more of a great undertaking. Um, and makes you question people who say, "Oh yeah, I had that experience with sitting in meditation, and now everything is good. Everything's all good now. I've meditated, and I had an experience of awakening." And it makes you question those easy experiences, especially when they're by Westerners who haven't spent their whole lives meditating, but maybe just went for a weekend retreat or something. Just give me a sense that I shouldn't expect anything to happen too easily. I should just really just put my head down and just work because it's a process, I guess. That's what I think about. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. It's like really humanizing the drama of this. It's like a good story. The first half of a good story of a book or a movie that you might watch or something. The first half of the film or the book is character building. Who the characters are. What their qualities are and so on like that. And then the conflict comes in the middle part, and then the resolution, is at the very end and so on. So this is building, a sense of who the character of Mara is, what he represents, and what the character of the Bodhisattva is, and what he represents. But in very human, understanding way, it's very theater. What do you think, Alex? You got any comment?
Yeah, I mean, it helps to put in perspective like the experience that we may have, and maybe kind of benchmark it against what kind of possible, and maybe like judge the depth of our own experience and in introspection, um, and maybe come to an idea that maybe that was a little bit as introduction rather than some profound experience. Maybe that was a little bit more like preview. There may be a still ground to cover and depth to dive into. So it's humbling, I would say. At least.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody else have any comment? Anything you'd like to close with? Okay, well then we'll continue on. We should be able to finish the next half of this chapter, and it gets a little bit more dramatic in the next part.
Over longer term.
Yes, uh, and then chapter 22 really takes on a whole new dimension. So we have that to look forward to. All right, well then, unless anybody has anything else you'd like to talk about, we'll do our dedication. So tonight we'll do the dedication by Lord Jigten Sumgön. Glorious, holy, venerable, precious kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yogins, Yoginis, and Dakinis, dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the 3 times, by myself and all sentient beings, in samsara and nirvana, and the innate word of virtue, not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Sharaka or Pratyeka Buddha. May all mothers sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Maras, and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I in any case gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om, Ah, Hong. Om, Ah, Hong. Om, Ah, Hong. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings. Thank you, brothers. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Lance.
You're welcome. Thank you. Good
Thank
night.
you, everybody.
Good night, Alex.